What's something small that completely changed the way you see the world? In college, a friend of mine during a debate said, "We need to ask two questions. What do we want? And how do we get there?" It is very simple, but seeing those as two separate questions changed how I approach nearly everything. Too often people just ask, "What's next?" or "How do I fix this?" without having a clear goal in mind. Know your goal, then make a plan.
That's some solid advice from your friend. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day problems without having a clear direction. I remember struggling with decisions during school, often jumping to solutions before defining what I really wanted. Since hearing that, I've tried to take a step back, ask those two questions, and outline my goals first. It definitely makes a difference in how I tackle challenges.
Gravestones, particularly ones that you know no one visits or the people that had remembered them are also gone. Had that revelation at my cousin's funeral looking around the graveyard. One day we are here, and one day we won't be. I chose to be a less reserved and more outgoing, and take care of myself more. It's been a fun revelation, actually.
It's interesting how a place like a graveyard can make you reflect. At that funeral, I realized how temporary life is. It pushed me to change my approach to life. I started being more social and focused on my well-being. It's funny how that moment shifted my perspective. Sometimes, it takes something heavy to inspire lighter living, you know? Just a reminder to make the most of the time we have.
Reading, especially reading outside of social media. Can't be said enough, but people don't understand or believe how reading rewires your brain. Your dialogue becomes better. You understand things in details, not in headlines. But we live in a technologically addicted era, so people don't read as much. Literacy rates in youth are suffering compared to only a decade ago, and that causes problems.
Yeah, reading outside social media is underrated. I remember when a friend started reading more books. It changed how they communicated, made them more thoughtful. We used to hang out in parks, just reading our own books. It felt good to disconnect from screens. Nowadays, it's rare to see kids with books. It's a shame that technology is taking over literacy. It's worth making that effort to read more, for sure.
An interaction I had when I was 12, hanging out with people I shouldn't, was offered heroin. I was into drinking and smoking weed and was already tipsy at that time, but turned it down. I could have easily gotten addicted and my life could have been completely different. I didn't think twice about that interaction until I was an adult. I now know how important those little decisions can be in the trajectory of life and will always be conscious of that now.
It's interesting how those moments shape us. At 12, you're just trying to fit in and have fun. Turning down something like heroin, especially when you're already kind of tipsy, is a big deal. It's wild to think about how different life could be if you made a different choice. Those little decisions really do add up, and it's good you realize that later on. Makes you more aware as you grow up.
My mental health was at its lowest my first couple years of college. Long story short, I was isolated, food and sleep deprived, and under immense pressure from family. I was watching a Let's Play of some multiplayer racing game and listening to the YouTubers rant. One of them said something that just realigned my brain. It doesn't matter what you're doing if you're fucking miserable. And it was true. I was so fucking miserable. I hated my college, my dorm, my roommates, and my part-time job. All of it made me miserable, but I was clinging to it because my family said it was important. It wasn't. It was killing me. I transferred colleges, went back to my home state, and spent the last 10 plus years trying to put myself back together.
I get that. College can be a tough time for a lot of people. It's easy to get caught up in what others expect and forget about your own well-being. Hearing that gamer call out the truth must have been a wake-up moment. It's good you made the change and started focusing on yourself. Taking control of your life is what matters in the end. Everyone deserves to feel okay with where they are.
I live in an area that's on about a 10% to 15% incline. It doesn't seem like much until you walk down about 6 blocks and look back thinking, man, now I have to carry groceries 1 mile uphill for me. A healthy, able-bodied person. It's annoying but not challenging. But every morning when I walk down to the donut shop, I realize how much that incline probably sucks for anyone with mobility issues. Like, imagine if you're in a wheelchair. Or like I've seen some homeless people with bad feet or crippled walk, etc. Once that incline gets icy in the wintertime, I have to wear ice bug, metal cleat, shoes to help me not fall down. For someone in a wheelchair or mobility issues when it's icy, that incline is basically a death trap. I also realized recently how much of the world around me is built for people like me. Kitchen counter heights, doorknobs, narrow hallways or elevators, etc. As an able-bodied person, I take most of that for granted. If you're in a wheelchair or have some other disability, all the normal stuff the rest of us take for granted is likely very frustrating.
It's interesting how the little things can make a big difference. I've walked those same blocks and thought about how tough that incline would be for someone with mobility issues. It's easy to overlook how everyday spaces aren't designed with everyone in mind. I guess it makes you more aware of how much we take for granted. It's a simple reminder to be mindful of the challenges others face.
A TikTok comment that said it's your mom's/dad's first time being a person too. I love my parents, but there have been many times in which I don't like them at all. Getting older has helped develop a better relationship with them. But once I saw this in a TikTok comment out of all places, I cried and called my parents the next day to check in and let them know how much I love them. We're all on this floating rock, trying our damn best. We're gonna fuck up, we're gonna piss people off, but we're all just trying to stay alive. Give people the same amount of grace you expect them to give you.
It's interesting how a simple comment can hit you hard. I remember feeling the same way about my own parents. Growing up, we had our share of conflicts. But as I got older, I realized they were just trying to figure things out too. That comment reminded me to appreciate them more. I reached out, and it made a difference. We're all just navigating life, doing our best. It really puts things in perspective.
Nothing looks good until it is finished. Made me stop being such a perfectionist and beating myself up when things didn't look right. Then I learned from watching this old man working on a hobby project. He just did a bit of it over time, whereas I would work myself until I would burn out. So now for big projects, I work a piece at a time, adjusting, thinking, and then relaxing.
That's a solid takeaway. I can relate. I used to pressure myself to get everything perfect at once. It was exhausting. But seeing that old man approach his project slowly changed my view. It's about progress, not perfection. Now I tackle tasks bit by bit. It makes a difference. I focus more on enjoying the process instead of stressing over every detail. It's a way healthier mindset.
A severely disabled little boy smiled at me. In the past, upon seeing a child with such significant medical problems, I would have thought, what a shame. What kind of life is that? Is that even worth living? Maybe a different outcome would have been better. Then, he smiled when I said his name. He has value. Every child like him has value. They are loved, and they can make your heart soar with just a smile.
That story hits different. It's easy to overlook the value in someone who's different from us. The way a simple smile can change your perspective is powerful. It's a reminder that every person has their own worth, regardless of their situation. Those moments can really open your eyes. Heartfelt connections come in many forms, and they often teach us more than we realize. Just sharing a name can mean so much.
It was a bit of a rabbit hole, but the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp. After that movie, I was curious about the idea of an AI-developed city, so I went onto YouTube to see if there were any computer-run city skyline sims run for different optimizations. I didn't find any, but I did come across City Planner Plays and Donoteed01, aka Justin Rosniak, SP, from Well There's Your Problem, who made videos about the politics regarding city planning and liberalism, which also lead to strong towns, and not just bikes, which sparked an interest in urbanism and walkable cities and towns.
It started with watching Transcendence. The idea of an AI city caught my attention, so I looked for city skyline sims focused on that. I didn't find much, but stumbled upon City Planner Plays and Justin from Well There's Your Problem. Their discussions about city planning and urbanism got me thinking about how cities function and the importance of walkable spaces. It became a bit of a deep dive from there.
As a teenager, I was watching some Winnetou movie on TV. As always, heavy fighting, Sam Hawkins shooting out of a window, killing some guy here, some there. Pung, pung, pung. And in the middle of the shooting at some random guy getting killed by him, it suddenly kind of struck me. This guy now lying dead on the floor had a father and a mother who gave birth to him, thought about his name during pregnancy, raised him, loved him, maybe were sodden that he chose the wrong path while he, now being dead, possibly knows all the answers to the questions mankind is asking for millennia, maybe meeting Jesus. So in all these action movies where people are dropping like flies, this thought always comes back to me.
That's an interesting perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the action without thinking about the people behind those characters. Each death in those movies represents a story, a family losing someone they cared about. It really makes you reflect on the impact of violence, even in fiction. It's a reminder that the stakes are more than just entertainment. They touch on real human experiences.
I've posted this before, but a few years ago, I was impatiently waiting in line at a big box store to buy some food during my lunch break when I noticed a little girl in the cart in front of me. I saw that we shared the same coloring and hairstyle, and that she was copying my grumpy face and the way I had my arms crossed. She noticed me noticing and got embarrassed until she saw that I was now smiling. We silently copied each other's movements and facial expressions until her mom finished checking out their groceries, and it was my turn. No one noticed our little game, but us. I don't mind waiting in line anymore. I think of my little follow-the-leader friend and hope she's doing well. She reminded me to be a good example and that it doesn't take much to change someone's mood with kindness.
That's a nice story. It's interesting how small interactions can really shift our perspective. Waiting in line can feel like a drag, but finding a moment of connection like that makes it worth it. Kids have a way of reminding us to lighten up. Just seeing that little girl mimic you turned what could have been a boring wait into something memorable. It's a simple reminder about how we affect each other.
People pass life stories. People often say, I don't really care about a person's past, but for me it's interesting. I constantly meet new people due to work, or even when I go out. They always tell me about their background, and where they are from, where they grown up at, what they did after school, what jobs they had done, and so on. So many of them have exciting, crazy, and even sad stories. I often think about where was I when that happened, time and date.
I get that. Everyone has their own journey, and hearing those stories gives you perspective. Some people have lived wild lives, while others have had their share of struggles. It makes you realize how interconnected we all are, even if we come from different places. Sometimes I find myself reflecting on my own past, wondering how my story fits into all of it. It's like a big puzzle of experiences.
Working front desk at a good for the area, hotel, and dealing with the bullshit from guests who blame you for anything that they don't like. I don't choose the TV channel lineup, set the prices, create the no pet policy, performance housekeeping or maintenance, handle the breakfast area. Don't be an ass to me because of any of that. It made me realize that the face of the business usually has very little to do with your overall experience. So don't take your frustrations out on them.
I get the struggle. Working the front desk, you become the punching bag for all the complaints. Guests vent about things that aren't even your fault. It's frustrating, but it teaches you that the person at the front is just doing their job. They're not responsible for the policies or decisions made behind the scenes. It's a reminder to be patient and understanding, because everybody plays a role in the experience.
Beef and pork are the meats I can't eat regularly. Once you've seen them in real life, there is an eerie anthropomorphicness when you see them having fun/enjoying life. It is the same with my spearfishing. Some fish are just super expressive and inquisitive. I'd only ever shoot red morwong, and I just enjoyed watching Australian salmon and kingfish do their thing.
I get that. Seeing animals in their natural habitat can change your perspective. I used to go fishing with friends, and we'd watch the fish swim around, just being fish. Sometimes we felt bad about catching any. Just like you with spearfishing, sometimes it's more about the experience and the vibe than actually taking something home. It's a balance between enjoying nature and the practicality of eating.
I developed vertigo last year, and I was only 29. I know people don't think it's that bad, but it really affects everyday life. Wake up dizzy and disoriented, and stay that way all day. And people think it's just a little dizzy. Some days, I can't sleep, and when I do get to sleep, I'm even dizzy in my damn dreams. I dreamt I was a waitress who knocked down every table I went to cause I was so disoriented. Some days, I have to sleep like a vampire because turning either way causes me to feel like my head is in a blender. Some days, it feels like I'm perpetually stuck on an elevator. Some days, it feels like the floor is wobbling. So yeah, it ain't life-threatening, but I feel it every day.
That sounds tough. I remember a time when I had a bad case of the flu. Just waking up felt like being hit by a truck. Some days, even getting out of bed was a challenge. It does mess with your head. I can't imagine dealing with vertigo like that. It changes how you see everyday things. You try to explain it, but people don't really get it unless they experience it themselves.
The bystander effect is real. Everyone thinks someone else is helping, so no one ends up stepping up. I was unlucky enough to witness a nasty crash just this morning. The engine compartment of this little sedan wrapped into a U-shape around the back of an 18-wheeler, and it took me a few seconds to realize that I can't rely on others to make that call. Unfortunately, I was on the other side of the interstate, going 75, so I couldn't stop to help, but I called 911 and gave them the location and situation. Everyone assumes someone else is helping.
It's wild how people just freeze up in those moments. I saw something similar last summer. A motorcycle went down at an intersection. At first, everyone just stared or kept driving. I ended up calling 911 too. Just felt like someone had to do something. It's crazy how the bystander effect kicks in, making people think others will step in. It's a reminder to not just stand by.
There is a flat marker right behind my wife's parents' gravestone. It has a birth date of 1914 and a date of death in the 1950s. The name and an army rank are given, and it states that the deceased was a veteran of World War I. It bothers me more than it should. I can't help but look at it every time we visit my wife's parents' grave. There was no one to ask for a correction. I mean, the monument company would have had to have fixed it at no extra cost if it were brought to their attention at the time.
It's odd how small details can stick with you. Every time you visit, that marker draws your eye. It's like a reminder of stories left untold. You wonder if someone noticed it back then and just didn't say anything. It's a bit unsettling, thinking about memories that fade away without anyone to correct them. Guess we all have our quirks. Some things just stay in the back of our minds.
Okay, so I have to admit, the more I read this back, the more it absolutely does sound like a shill, so I forgive the skeptics. I might have called it out too if I'd read it somewhere else. But I'm done commenting, and I'm not taking it down. Next time I tell the story, I'm not going to mention the brand name. Hope you have the day you deserve.
I get the hesitation. It's tough when something sounds too good to be true. Sharing personal experiences can come off that way, especially with brand names involved. Sometimes, just keeping it to yourself or vague makes it easier. Anyway, I hope you have a good day, too.
A month or so ago, I spaced out in line at a grocery store that was absolutely packed because we had a winter storm coming. My dumbass accidentally paid for the groceries of the dude in front of me thinking it was my turn. Both he and the cashier got looks of panic on their faces, as there was a line of about 12 people anxious to check out. I told him to not worry about it and pay it forward. Your story made me wonder if this had any impact on his life.
That's a pretty wild moment. I once had a similar experience in a coffee shop. I was in a rush and accidentally dropped my wallet. The person behind me picked it up and handed it to me. I just said thanks and told them to get a treat or something with it. Later, I thought about how small actions can ripple out. It makes you wonder if that moment meant anything to them.
Years ago, I discovered that by complimenting random men, it would stick with them for a very long time, and in multiple cases it come back to benefit me directly. A recent example is I complimented the concierge on his tie at a hotel, and he would smile and greet me by name every time I passed by after that while ignoring basically everyone else.
That's interesting. Compliments can really change the vibe. It's cool how a simple comment can build a connection. The concierge remembering your name shows how little things can make a difference in interactions. It's nice to see kindness work in your favor like that, creating a more pleasant experience when you're staying somewhere. It seems like it can be a good strategy in engaging with people.
Just a compliment can stick with you for so long. I was at the mall once, and a lady was looking at me, and I was so self-conscious. 100,000 reasons why she was looking were going through my brain and all the bad things I thought about myself. She came up to me and told me how much she loved my hair, how she had been trying to get that exact color. It made me feel so good. I will never forget that for some reason, but you just never know when something is going to make a difference to someone.
Sometimes it takes just a simple compliment to change your day. I remember being at the coffee shop, feeling a bit off. A stranger told me my shirt was cool, and it lifted my mood. It's funny how small moments can stick with you. Little things like that matter, and you never know what someone else is going through. Just a few kind words can really make a difference.
Elaboration on request. I was studying to be a biology teacher, but I really didn't like math that well, and I never was able to successfully solve the quadratic equation. Calculators doing this function were not common at the time. I was struggling in school, lost on what I really wanted to do. The moment he pulled out the quadratic equation was the moment I had enough and walked out to change majors to anthropology. It was a poor decision that contributed greatly to me being a couple more years from success. You can't get a job in anthropology, so I was employed for $200 per week at a rent-to-own place. Postscript, I did later go back when I was more serious at school and did get my teaching degree. My later chem professors told me that chemists hate situations that require quadratic solving and taught me the shortcuts that avoid such heartache. Plus calculators, and my dedication had improved considerably in the intervening years.
I get it. You tried to find your way in school, but some subjects just don't click. That moment with the quadratic equation sounds frustrating. Walking out must have been tough, but switching to anthropology, even if it felt risky, was a decision to explore something new. It's cool that you eventually went back and got your teaching degree. Those shortcuts in chemistry seem like they really made a difference for you.
All good points. Worth pointing out that my use of debate here was not in the normal sense of college debate leagues. My school had a weird internal debate league that looked nothing like the competitive aspects other schools had, although we had that too, for those who wanted that approach. This debate was done in good faith of everyone actually trying to better themselves and convince each other, or just figure out what they actually believed.
Sounds like a unique experience. Not the typical debate setting, but it seems like everyone was genuinely invested in understanding different perspectives. It's interesting how debates can vary so much between schools. It's cool that your group focused on growth and genuine discussion rather than just competition. I bet it fostered some good friendships and deeper conversations along the way.
You mean a comment posted by generic word-generic word-numbers username, with their background and advertising posted right in their profile, is posting a suspicious story about how Starbucks coffee can make someone who is sad because there are so many great Starbucks choices finally feel better because they got to have delicious Starbucks coffee every week? I hope he isn't trying to influence my thoughts on Starbucks.
It's funny how some people try to push their opinions as if they matter. I had a friend who would hype up every product they liked, making it seem like your life needed it too. One day, they raved about a specific brand of coffee. I just nodded along, thinking I'd rather stick to my usual spot. Sometimes, less hype leads to better choices.
Honestly, it's awareness. Now that you know, just start paying attention to it. RBF is just a total disregard for how your face looks. It's just existing. It's not bad or good, just neutral. So I've learned how to describe this, pull up my ears and raise my brows a little bit. Add in just a little tug of my mouth and a smile. Nothing crazy, just more of a raised neutral position. If that makes sense.
I get that. One of my friends used to have this thing where his face looked pretty serious all the time, even if he was chill. He started practicing a little smile, too, just to change how people reacted to him. It didn't take much, just a slight adjustment, but it helped. Sometimes it's just about being aware of those little things. It's interesting how something so small can shift perceptions.
Absolutely indescribable. To not have to worry about glasses breaking or being lost, an impromptu road trip, a midnight emergency. To not worry about seeing is spectacular. I'd recommend it highly from a reputable surgeon, not like a Groupon. The actual procedure is no big deal at all. It's about 2 minutes total. The longest part is waiting for the eye drops to be ready.
I had a friend who got LASIK last year. Before that, they were always stressed about their glasses. One time, they lost a pair during a hike. After the surgery, they felt so free. No more worrying about broken glasses or foggy lenses. Just good vision. They even took a spontaneous trip right after the healing. It seemed to change their whole perspective on life. Simple clarity makes a big difference.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.